So ready.
Totally.
All right. Perfect. Well, with that being said, we can kick it off formally. Well, welcome everyone to another wonderful IMX Spotlight. We're focusing on the very only Resurgence. I'm the community manager here at IMX David, and I'm very happy to be joined by two wonderful guests. So, without further ado, I'll go ahead and let you start it off, Blake. Could you please introduce yourself and your role before passing it off to Russ?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So I am one of the key vision holders for the game with Russ. So we kind of lead strategy and the vision and the implementation for everything that you see and everything that you will see with Resurgence. I'm also technically the title is Chief Strategy Officer, and I come very much from a NFT background. In 2018, I published the first academic thesis ever on crypto art. So I've been studying kind of NFTs. Of course, before that was the term that you used since 2016. So been in the space for a long time, and just so excited about Resurgence, our game, and everything we're building. And I can leave it to you, Russ, now.
Thanks. Hi. So yeah, I work with Blake on the vision for the project. I suppose I'm called a Chief Creative Officer, which is creative director, really, of sorts. I suppose my background, I've been in the gaming industry for the last 30 years. So, but mainly working with like innovative products, so playing around with VR and in AR and a bit with gaming robotics, and I have a desire and interest for all things new. Hence Resurgence and I suppose our entrance into Web3. So work closely with Blake on the vision.
Nice. Thanks for the intros. It's definitely really interesting having a guest who's one of the first people to post research papers on the Web3 space. Super cool. And Russ, really excited to hear about Resurgence, especially with your time in the games industry. So, without further ado, we can go ahead and kick things off here when it comes to the game itself. Now we know the wonderful people behind it. So, what's the story behind Resurgence? Not like the lore, but more so the development. How and why did it begin?
Oh, yeah, that's isn't it? I suppose it started from really just thinking about Web3 really, and looking and thinking about what a community game would feel and be like, and what were the things people and behaviours we think that people would want to do in a game. How would they want to interact as a community in a game? And Web3 is a very different environment for game developers. So in a traditional gaming environment, we hide away, we make a game, and we put it out into the community. We don't really interact with the community as we're making it so much. It's all very secret. And we were thinking really about a kind of game where, how do we create a game that's open with the community, get the community involved? What sort of like type of game would work well in that sense? And Resurgence being a kind of having a really strong, relatable theme around, I suppose, looking at the world we live in now and the ecological disaster, I suppose, we all face, throwing up questions around how we might behave as a community to stop that or prevent that, and if we can't, how we might re-emerge. Sort of came out of, I suppose, our brainstorming sessions around like, what's the game we're going to create.
And I think too, just to add to what Russ was saying, it's like, coming from a traditional game building background, I think, what the entire team really believed in and saw were all the ways in which there could be such innovative ownership, like what everyone says, innovative ownership models, innovative coordination models between players, between gamers, and the way that, game gamers can really kind of take responsibility and take hold of IP, of storyline, of items in ways never seen before. And I think, we're really excited about actually doing something new. And Web3 is really the only way to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate kind of just how candid it came about, especially with the focus on potential ecological issues. That's really an interesting consideration. So moving forward, on your website, you mentioned that you have a track record of building games that are engaging, rewarding, and thought-provoking. Could you tell us a little bit more about what these games are for some of our first-time viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I suppose we're really fortunate. I suppose our team's got a wide variety of experience. So they've worked across many of the big studios like PlayStation, EA, Sumo Digital. They've worked on titles like FIFA and Gran Turismo and Tomb Raider and The Sims. But we've also been working within VR and immersive storytelling. So part of our business has been looking at VR for the last few years. Presently developing a Peaky Blinders title. And I suppose we've been thinking about how story and narrative works in those worlds. How do you draw people into those worlds? And I suppose as a team, we've been, back to Blake's point, is like how do you think differently when you're working within a medium like gaming, and how do you get that, how do you bring community into it, and how do you equalise them with game developers so they become part of the process? So I think the team generally as a whole has had a wide breadth of experience, but also has the ability to think quite openly about gaming, probably because they've been, a lot of the team are quite mature. They've been in the industry quite a while. And I think we like narrative.
I'll just add to that too.
So I was going to say, narrative's right at our core, I suppose, Blake, isn't it? And for us, it was always a story.
Totally.
Storytelling was always going to be a big part, and one that made people think.
And I think too, just to add to Russ was saying, and because everyone really, I come from the crypto side, as I said, but most of the team really comes from the traditional gaming side, and Russ would never want to talk about himself because he's very modest, but he was a really key influential figure at PlayStation for a very long time, Lego before that. So we're talking like big companies building games for millions of people, in which narrative always plays a really key role. And as Russ said, we have so much experience in that on that side of things, and the studios and titles that everyone has worked on. It's the who's who of the gaming industry.
That's wonderful. And kind of speaking a little bit more on narrative, if you're both okay with that, I'd love to hop over to some of the gameplay and just general world of Resurgence.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the world itself at the moment, we've been thinking about how we tell this story, and the way that we've decided to go about it is almost place people in the story right now, so that make people feel like they're taking part in this story of 2032. We're slightly set in the near future, and we're facing ecological disaster. And to tell part of that story, we've created there's an ARG, which is an alternative reality game, which is really a bit like a paper chase across the internet. Lots of websites that are springing up that we've created, telling the story of some of the people in that world of Resurgence, and some of that stories told out in our trailer, but it's also found across the internet. And ultimately, that story is leading us all as developers and as community towards the Resurgence MMORPG, which is set 1,000 years after, unfortunately, ecological disaster. And we wake up in a completely new world. And in that world, nature's survived, and as it does without us, quite well. But it's also evolved. And then for us as a community, it's about finding out what's useful in that world, what what resources can we utilize, what factions start to form, and it's kind of a look at like how do those communities then evolve, knowing where we've come from, and do we just repeat stuff again?
And I think to add to what Russ was saying, and David, to your point around narrative, it's like also on we have our first kind of flagship NFT that launched in August, and it's not just any NFT. We want every single activation that we have to actually really lead into the storyline, and by engaging with kind of the game assets that we have, in this case our Gen Zero cryo tag, you're actually going to be learning more about the storyline. It pulls you in, and the ARG as well is incredibly detailed in terms of some of the key characters that have key roles leading up to the end of the world, which is unfortunately coming very soon, at least in our game lore. So and we always want to be prioritizing the story and the narrative, and making sure that every single thing we do in terms of releases, sales, Web3 building, as well as the game building and bringing those together, that is, narrative is always first, story is always first, because we think that is one of our really, really big strong suits, considering again how much experience we have in the game world. So that's always what we're leading with, no matter what.
It's really awesome that your team is especially focusing on the narrative. It's super important, not just to Web3 gaming, but also Web2. So just again, for our first-time listeners, how would you describe Resurgence in terms of game genre?
So Resurgence is really an MMORPG where you, in a world where you can, it's a survival game where you can craft, and where players can take ownership of the things within that world. So it allows them to take on skills, so acquire skills, create their own unique items in that world. And for us, user-generated content becomes quite an interesting addition to this genre, where it allows people to create things that the community will value. And if the community will value, those things will become desirable. And it's a place where I suppose factions will have tension, so there's potential for some conflict within that world as well.
And I think to add to what Russ was saying, the reason that we chose the genre that we did is because, MMOs, it's all about people coming together, communicating, and we think that the Web3 layer on top of that actually can bring out new game dynamics, as, ownership is an immediate social coordination mechanism, right? So we think that it's a genre that can be really innovated on in Web3, which is, of course, our main goal. So we're really excited to be working within the genre, because we think it really lends itself to kind of the Web3 model.
Yeah, and I suppose MMOs traditionally, if you look at how people play those on Web2, they're very community focused. As much happens outside of the game as happens inside the game, as in conversation, even people sort of like giving, tips on like how to craft, or, identifying an event that's happening within the world at the time. So it feels like it's the perfect sort of like format to start to evolve.
Definitely. And I'm a little bit curious as well. The team over Resurgence, you guys are so innovative. Are there any differentiating mechanics for Resurgence from the MMO and survival genre that you're pretty excited to talk about with viewers and listeners?
I think the most exciting thing will be the way that we're beginning to look at crafting. and how people will be able to find things within resources in the world that will be rare or maybe numerous, and how being able to combine those things to the way to what players need, they'll be able to create their own essentially NFTs within that world, and hopefully generate their own small world economies within there. It's really about enabling players to sort of like take ownership of it, and you do see that a bit in you see the potential of that often in Web2 games, but it could really be realised here, and I think that's the area that we're really excited about innovating within. Obviously there'll be combat, and we see that happening within all games, but this feels like an area that you could really, really innovate and could be very, very focused around the Web3 community.
Love a robust crafting system. That definitely does sound very innovative. I'm pretty excited for it. I've been lost in many crafting systems myself. There's a bit, but again, MMOs do have do allow the ability for you to specialize. So, like, if crafting is your thing, and I'm like, I do love to craft rather than to combat because I usually fail. Then that's where you can put your focus, and that felt again something that was more open and accessible. And that's quite important to us, that we can make this game feel accessible to people rather than MMOs can feel quite intimidating. Absolutely. Accessibility is so huge, and it's something that we hear often, especially on a lot of IMX projects. So happy to hear you mention it by name. Always makes my day. So we're coming up to about the halfway point here. So if you guys are comfortable, I'd love to jump over to some tokenomics questions I've got.
Yeah, totally. Let's do it.
Awesome. So on your roadmap and in our giveaway today that I believe we'll be addressing at the end of the space, you have a cryo tag, which you also mentioned earlier. What is it exactly, and how can a player use it for? I know it's a little redundant because you talked about it, but still would love the soundbite.
Oh no, yeah, we gotta get into it, right? It's our big flagship piece. So the more we talk about it, I think the better. So our Gen Zero cryo tag, we released it very quietly some months ago, and it was an allow list only mint. We really curated, I guess you could say, the guest list or the holder list. We brought in so many people that we respect, and that we just wanted to kind of be included along in the journey with us. And there's only 1,000 of them, and it's really the NFT that we want to build the world around. And every kind of piece of Web3 mechanics, every piece of MMO gameplay when we do get there and when we do launch the game, it's all kind of everything is about really driving value and access back to that Gen Zero, and it's really your ticket to the game, and it's really the thing that you want to own and have to own to make sure that you have maximum exposure, maximum access to everything that we're doing, and we're really excited to play around with all of that and just see how far we can push ownership mechanics and reward systems around it, and making sure again that we're really supporting our key early holders at all times. One of our key pillars that Russ and I always talk about is we want to be making sure we're driving value to the community, and ownership of that Gen Zero is really central to driving value back to our early supporters and the people that take their time out to be chatting in the Discord and be engaging with the ARG. So it's the really, really key important piece, I would say, of Gen Zero.
Love it. Crisp explanation. That was super straight to the point.
Was it Chris? I'm happy to hear that. That's a good feedback, so thank you.
Yeah, no, that was... So we tend to ask those questions a lot. That's probably the most direct and straight to the point and efficient answer. That was That was really cool.
Listen, I'll tell you this. At Resurgence, we love efficiency. You know, we love crispness, so happy to hear it.
Awesome. And speaking of efficiency, so how is Resurgence approaching the in-game tokenomics? I'm expecting that same wonderful touch that you've applied to the other topics we've discussed so far.
Yeah, wow, a wonderful touch. Amazing. Okay, so I will say that what we're thinking about at the moment is really leading with NFTs and playing around with if it's playing around with how to gamify marketplaces, how to gamify buying and selling, and making sure that we don't actually release, really thinking deeply about how to release a token and making sure that we don't do that actually too soon, and making sure that instead what we're doing is bringing along the buying and selling of genuinely like useful items, as Russ said, in crafting, in actually using in the Resurgence world and in the game world when it happens. So for us right now, what we're planning is releasing more super high value NFTs as well as super accessible ones. So you can actually, again, on the story side, really through ownership, through buying and selling, contribute to your identity within the game and the storyline. You know, whether that's consumables and cosmetics, whatever it is, we're wanting to make sure that that's kind of on our next step, and we're thinking deeply about that.
Love it. So, really quickly here, because I know that there was a giveaway, did you guys want to call it out before we started moving some of these wrap-up questions so we could get it a second time?
I mean, we love a giveaway. We love giving away. So, yes, for people listening right now, we are going to be giving away a Gen Zero cryo tag. In terms of the actual details of the giveaway, I want to make sure that I actually get it right before I read it out. But basically, if you're engaging with the Twitter Spaces, liking, retweeting, we're gonna pick someone to kind of begin the journey with us. If you don't already have a Gen Zero, and you can hop into our Discord. All the information is there. But yeah, we're everyone listening. Be ready for the giveaway.
All right. We'll remind you again at the very end, don't worry, listeners, but you heard it here first. So with that, we'll go ahead and move over to some of these wrap-up questions. So Blake and Russ, this applies to, both of you, so feel free to decide who takes it first. So you have a game-first philosophy. Can you speak more on this and just how the mission statement really applies to Resurgence? And what is your vision of the future?
Well, I can do the game first, I guess. I'll start first on the game first. I think when we started saying game first, it was almost, it felt quite a fresh word. And I'm pleased to say, actually, I hear it a lot. And I think that's really important that actually the gameplay is being put first, because that's what these experiences are about. But for us, it also means everything. So everything from the cryo tag to the app that we're creating at this very moment, to the way that you interact with the cryo tags, the way that we bring features into the community, always centers around story and gameplay. So we're not waiting till the end to deliver a full MMO mode to the community. What we want to do is introduce features through the app over the coming months that will get them into parts of the game, get them to experience and actually utilize some areas of the game as we're developing them, because that's uniquely for us kind of Web3. And I guess, where do I see the future? I think that's really, it's always a bit of an interesting one, but I think the synergy between game developers and these communities and the way that we make experiences together means that rather than waiting for developers to create a game in 3 to 4 years' time, they'll be looking at new ways to evolve game development to build the communities along the side the games that they're making. That's the game developer point of view of the future, I guess.
And yeah, where I really see the future is just continually making it easier for people to engage with Web3 mechanics in ways that they don't even know they're engaging with it, and getting the benefits, i.e. the ownership, i.e. the actual upside for supporting a game. And that's really exciting. And I think, again, that's what IMX really actually allows for it, and is so aligned with what we believe in that way. So, I think the future is really exciting in terms of that. We'll just see quality improve in terms of, all the top games. You'll now have this choice where you can kind of play, traditional games in Web 2 or even Web 1 areas and aspects, but you'll then have the choice to engage with the Web3 aspects and see, bring in that kind of economic aspect that can be really helpful, and another way to have more fun and to engage more deeply in gameplay. So I think in that way, it's really, really exciting, and that's why, again, IMX is a really fantastic partner for us, because I think that you guys are so aligned on that vision.
Well, we think you're a wonderful partner too, so it goes both ways. So we've got just 2 more questions here for both of you. So obviously you told us a little about the philosophy behind the future and what's coming. Is there anything on the roadmap that you're keen to share with the community?
Yeah, so I guess, we can talk about our next release, which will be coming very, very shortly. And it's a staking mechanic that's only available for Gen 0 holders, which again is the reason why you gotta get one. And it is the way that it's kind of our first activation with our Gen 0. It's going to be the first immediate way that you're able to get rewarded for holding it. And there'll be really interesting kind of point systems releasing. We're kind of rolling out, again, rewarding people for engagement and ownership, which centers around this Gen 0. And it's going to be really incredible. And we're really excited about it. Again, buying the Gen 0 now, there'll be kind of immediate utility coming very soon, which will set you up for airdrops, will set you up for kind of all the upsides moving forward, engaging with our next kind of activation. Russ, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I don't know that I can add anything to that. I think, again, it goes back to that game first. We really want to engage people that, our cryo-tag community, and we want to give them the ability to be rewarded for engaging with the project. Really, we don't want people to just hold the token, the NFT. We want them to actually engage, with us as part of the community and with the project. And we really want to reward them for that, and we're putting in place mechanisms to do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the thought that's gone into just the absolute use for those tokens, not just having users hold them. So we've got one final, I guess, true question, apart from what's going to come after that. But this is a question we ask every single space to all of our partners. And if there was one key takeaway, 2 sentences or less, that any of our viewers and our listeners could catch, what would it be?
I think it's, for us, it's, not investment advice, but buy the Gen 0, you will absolutely be rewarded.
You got anything to that, Russ?
I would just add, if you're part of our community or you become part of our community, become really vocal, because we're listening and we're wanting to engage with the community all of the time. So join the Discords and speak to the developers.
Awesome. And with that, I'll go ahead and say a little blurb before passing it back to you two to take it home. Don't forget, everyone, join the Resurgence Discord, follow their socials, follow Russ, follow Blake, or don't. I don't tell you what to do, but I think it's a great idea. Don't forget to follow the Resurgence Twitter as well. And on the IMX side, don't forget to come stop by our Discord server, our Twitter, and Reddit. It's a great place to be and great place to learn all about awesome projects just like this one. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Blake and Russ. You guys have been wonderful, so I'll let you guys say goodbye and any parting messages before I close down the space.
Well, thank you so much for having us both. We really appreciate IMX's support and your support and everyone here showing up and listening. Again, if you do have questions for Russ and I, DM us, talk to us on Discord, all of the above. And I will say as well, Dominic is on the call and he's going to be kind of running the giveaway for us, the Gen Zero. So there's going to be a tweet that we post after this. And that will give you all the details as to how to be qualified for the giveaway. So just make sure, again, that very quickly you keep your eyes on the Resurgence Twitter to get the Gen Zero. And thank you so much.
You sign off so well, Blake. Again, I would just reiterate, follow us. You want to engage with us, you can DM us, join our Discord, follow us on Twitter. Buy Gen Zero, become part of the community. That's what I'd say. Thank you.
Great job. Thanks for having both of you. With that, I'll go ahead and end the space. Thank you, everyone.